For something like 1400 years, the story of Isa's birth has been told as this incredible, one-of-a-kind, fatherless miracle. But what if? What if the Quran itself actually holds the key to a totally different story? In this explainer, we're going to walk through a really methodical case from Dr. Hani. He lays out 10 distinct proofs, pulling them right from the Quran, that really challenge that foundational narrative. So get ready to see the story in a way you probably never have before.
So here's our game plan. We're going to break this whole thing down step by step. First, we'll just set the stage. Then, we're going to dive into the 10 proofs, but we'll group them by theme to make it easier to follow. We'll look at what he calls the universal laws of creation, then a whole new take on that famous Adam comparison. After that, we'll see the family connection in the narrative, and finally, a reinterpretation of those key miraculous phrases. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at Dr. Hani's big conclusion on what the ultimate purpose of this whole story might be. So, let's kick things off by laying out the core idea of Dr. Hani's interpretation. And it's an idea that goes right up against a story that's been accepted for centuries. I mean, we all know the story, right? Isa, son of Maryam, born without a human father. It's a central account for billions of people, and it's really a cornerstone of Islamic tradition. It's always been presented as this clear, undeniable miracle. But here is the massive question that Dr. Hani puts on the table. What if that accepted story is actually the result of us reading outside ideas into the Quran instead of just letting the Quran interpret itself? What if the text, when you really analyze it with its own internal logic, its own language, actually reveals a story of a completely natural birth with both a mother and a father? That's the journey we're about to go on. And this whole journey starts with the absolute basics, the foundational principles of creation. Dr. Hani's case doesn't begin with the details of Isa's story, but with what he argues are unbreakable, universal laws that the Quran lays out for every single human being. The very first proof is what Dr. Hani calls the zygote law. Okay, so this first proof is all about consistency. Dr. Hani points to a bunch of verses all over the Quran, and they all say the same exact thing. Every insan, that's every human being, is created from a nutfa, a zygote. And the text goes on to define this zygote as something that's inseminated, coming from the act of intercourse between two people. Verse after verse hits this same note. And not once, not a single time, is an exception ever mentioned for anyone. And that leads us right into the second proof, the two parents law. Now, this isn't just a biological point. Dr. Hani says it's a divine principle. To argue against the idea that he himself has a son, Allah uses a very specific line of logic. You need a mate to have a child. Dr. Hani presents this as a universal rule set by the Creator for all of creation. So the thinking goes, if this logic applies at the divine level, well, it absolutely has to apply at the human level. Therefore, for any human to have a son, a mate is required, period. And the third proof just builds on this by looking at the mindset of the characters in the story themselves. Dr. Hani calls this the no miraculous pregnancy law. Right here, the characters' own words provide the evidence. When Maryam is told she'll have a son, her first reaction isn't, she questions how it's even possible without a man. And Zachariah asks a really similar question. Their shock tells us something huge. The idea of a fatherless birth was completely foreign to them. Even these people, who were receiving divine guidance, were working under the assumption that you needed a man and a woman for a baby to be conceived. Okay, so that foundation in universal laws is absolutely critical as we get to the next set of proofs. These tackle one of the most famous verses in the entire story, the comparison between Isa and Adam. And Dr. Hani offers a radically different way of understanding it. And this is proof number 4, the Turab law. Okay. This one is a really big deal, and it all comes down to the meaning of one Arabic word, turab. The verse says Adam was created from turab. For centuries, pretty much everyone has translated this as soil or dust, but Dr. Hani argues that within the Quran's own internal dictionary, turab doesn't mean the physical substance of soil, but rather the quality of being a multitude, a collection of many different parts, like grains of sand. One grain of sand isn't turab, the whole pile is. So, what does changing that one word do to the famous comparison? It flips it completely on its head. The traditional view says Isa is like Adam, because they were both miraculous, fatherless creations. But Dr. Hani's interpretation says the verse is actually saying the exact opposite. It's saying Isa is like Adam because neither of them was a special one-off creation. Both came from turab, a multitude, meaning they descended from prior human beings, just like you and me.
The verse, in this view, is a confirmation of their normalcy, not their uniqueness.
And this leads us straight into the fifth proof, which looks at the grammar of that exact same verse, the recurrence of Isa and Adam law.
The fifth proof isn't just about the words, it's about the grammar. The verse is talking about Adam's creation, which is a past event, right? But the command be and he is uses the verb yakun, which is in the present and future tense, not the past. Why? Dr. Hani says this is intentional. It's a signal that both Adam as a type of person and Isa aren't just figures locked in the past. Their existence is a recurring potential, which kind of undermines the whole idea that they were these unique, unrepeatable miracles.
Okay, let's move on. For this next section, Dr. Hani zooms out from the individual words and instead looks at the bigger picture, the narrative structure, and he finds what he believes is a really clear pattern of family connection in the Quran.
So here, Dr. Hani argues that the story's context actually gives us 3 proofs rolled into one. The 6th proof is the family of Zachariah. He points out that in 3 totally separate chapters, the stories of Zachariah, Maryam, Yahyah, and Isa are told as this one single interconnected saga. He says this isn't just a coincidence, it's a deliberate grouping. The 7th proof looks at Zachariah's prayer. He asks for dhurriya, which means progeny. It's a plural word. It implies more than one child, which fits into a bigger family plan. And the 8th proof is the whole theme of the story. In Surah Al-Imran, the entire narrative is explicitly framed around this idea of progeny. So, these 3 things together show the Quran is telling one continuous family story, not just a series of separate miracles.
And now we're at the last 2 proofs. These ones directly address the phrases that are most often used as the definitive evidence of a unique, miraculous event, the whole idea of breathing of a spirit into Maryam.
So this brings us to the grand finale of proofs, numbers 9 and 10, which re-examine the most miraculous-sounding parts of the story. Proof 9 argues that the breathing of a spirit into Maryam wasn't a one-time thing. Dr. Hani shows that this exact same phrasing is used elsewhere in the Quran to describe the creation of all humanity. Then, proof 10 does the same thing for the phrase ruh, or spirit, from Allah. Receiving a ruh is also presented as a universal idea in the text, usually meaning divine inspiration or guidance given to lots of people. So in this view, Maryam's experience wasn't some unique biological event, but a powerful spiritual one, described with language that actually applies to all of us.
So after 10 proofs that chip away at the traditional story, we are left with a massive question. Why? I mean, if Isa had a father, why is the story presented in this confusing way? And this is where Dr. Hani offers his final, really powerful conclusion about its true purpose.
And here it is, the whole argument tied up in a bow. According to Dr. Hani, Isa was the biological son of Zachariah and Maryam, from a marriage that was divinely approved according to the rules of the time. But he was called Isa, son of Maryam, to intentionally hide who his father was. This created a test. Would Bani Israel accept a prophet based on the truth of his message, or would they reject him because they thought he didn't come from their preferred ethnic line? The ambiguity, that was the entire point. It was a divine test of faith over prejudice.
And that really just leaves us with this final thought. Dr. Hani's interpretation, built on these 10 proofs, suggests that for centuries, a foundational story might have been understood in a way that's totally opposite to the text's own internal evidence. It really forces us to ask a tough question. How much of what we believe about any ancient text is shaped by the text itself, and how much is shaped by the powerful, centuries-old stories we've simply been told about it?